Research and innovations for the public sector, politics and business. News from the department Administration, Economics, Security, Politics at FH Campus Wien.
Welcome back to the podcast on my research project on digitalization and access to administrative justice. Today I'm going to share with you some findings from the South African case study, where I had the great opportunity of spending 6 weeks with the public protector, the National Ombuds institution, and accompanying the outreach officials in different provinces throughout the country. South Africa has a population of around 62 million, and it is the most unequal country in the world. Whether measured in terms of income, wealth, or living standards, the vast majority of economic benefits of the country are concentrated in the hands of a small proportion of the population, and still today, 30 years after the end of apartheid and the establishment of democracy, many of them are white. Unsurprisingly, the persistent social inequality also became visible in many ways in my research. So when we look at the matter of digitalization, South Africa's telecommunications infrastructure is among the most advanced on the continent. Recent initiatives have concentrated on expanding and enhancing networks to improve internet connectivity. In 2023, new satellite solutions were introduced to extend connectivity in rural areas, and the mobile sector has also seen growth, partly driven by the limited availability and service quality of fixed-line networks, leaving many to rely on mobile networks for voice and data services. However, even with the development of infrastructure and certain progress in advancing digital inclusion, the digital divide persists in South Africa. Although broadband infrastructure is available across the country, according to data from 2022, only 76% of South Africans use the internet. This especially affects socially and economically marginalized citizens who currently don't benefit from the opportunities internet access and digital literacy provide, thus deepening the digital divide as the infrastructure evolves. The divide exists along gendered, racialized, and class lines, with men using the internet and mobile phones more than women, as well as white people and individuals with tertiary qualifications showing higher ICT usage. When it comes to policy interventions, scholars conclude that certain actions have only improved access for those who were already using the internet, not for those who weren't using it at all. All the while, a presidential commission on the Fourth Industrial Revolution was appointed in 2019 to develop a digital strategy, as well as a national digital and future skills strategy in 2020, with the aim to build a digitally skilled society to participate in the evolving digital economy. The strategy includes initiatives such as the South Africa in the Digital Age project, with the objective to chart pathways for inclusive growth in the digital age. Also, the Department of Public Service Administration is working on a digital policy framework to drive public service transformation. This framework aims to leverage digital technologies to enhance government operational efficiency and foster a citizen-centric approach to governance. According to available information, the goal is to instill a digital-first mindset across all government departments and agencies, promoting collaboration and coordination among government entities. In addition, the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies has been involved in digital government initiatives, including the development of a national e-government strategy and roadmap. According to the official documents, these efforts are geared towards guiding the digital transformation of the public service into an inclusive digital society. On this basis, global indices suggest that South Africa has a strong ICT governance framework, but its policies remain largely unimplemented. Additionally, data shows that the country struggles with the so-called demand-side indices such as internet uptake, skills, and digital awareness. So based on this very brief contextualization, we want to share some interview quotes from our research participants who were asked about their assessments of the current situation and the near future with regard to digitalization and access to public services. These interview passages focused particularly on the challenges that people experience in this context and especially in rural and less developed regions. To gain a diverse range of perspectives on this issue, I talked to people in different roles. The first quote will be from a citizen, the second one from a government representative, and the third one from two staff of the public protector, the national ombud. As you will hear, their accounts have important overlaps. Together, they paint a clear picture of some of the current challenges. So first, a citizen's perspective. During an event in a rural area of the Eastern Cape, which is among the provinces with the poorest infrastructure in South Africa, I spoke to a lady in her 60s who was sitting in the audience and had worked for the government in the area of human development and capacity building for municipalities, but who decided to come back to the rural area after that in order to give back to the community. She turned out to be the mother of the local chief, or prince as he was also called, who had organized the big event in cooperation with the public protector. I should add here that the following quote is based on my notes and as I wasn't able to record the interview. The lady describes a situation that is her own and that of the local community as follows.
I'm on social media, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. The youth use them. They are in a digital space. For the elderly, it's a challenge. Most of them use small phones. I've taught many how to use the smartphone. One of them was 83 years old. I'm proud of that. I use email because I know it for my work, but rural people usually don't. They haven't been taught. There is no opportunity. They're scared of the scams. There are many of them. Also, in the rural area, it's a struggle with the network. You need a particular network for a particular area. It comes and goes. I use email to apply for services, but it's not an option for rural people. The government should open physical offices. The people are far away from public services. They don't get any information on public services. People don't have enough data and they don't go to websites, so they miss out on a number of opportunities. They don't have access to information. The government has to reach out to the people. There should be one person for public services in every community. I sometimes open up my house for different issues. I call officials to come, from the Department of Agriculture, Home Affairs, Social Development, Health Department, but they don't always come or it takes a lot of time. Some of them don't have cars. Some of them try, but it's too much of a struggle with the transport. A social worker told me, I wish I could come. People don't understand. Sometimes it's even difficult to get an ambulance here. There was this very ill lady. I took her in my car, but they can't give you money for the transport because they're on allowances. They have their elderly grant only, which is minimal and just enough for food. In some communities, the people never see the government. Before the elections, there was not a single poster from a party in this area. Some will die without ever seeing them. It also depends on the traditional leader. If they are laid back, things will not happen. Our chief gets the government to come and listen to the people's problems. There is also inequality among the rural areas. The government needs to reach out to the communities. One can never finish that. Every day they're left behind. The youth are in the cities because life is better there. They don't want to come back.
I think the lady summarizes quite well some of the key challenges that people in the rural areas encounter with regard to accessing public services, be it digitally or in person. She seems to be very committed to helping the people in her community make use of their rights and benefits. One important aspect she mentions refers to the problem that many people, first of all, don't have access to information, which leads to them missing out on a lot of opportunities. Some of the difficulties she explains are also mentioned by the government official who is featured in the second quote. Of course, there were different views among different government officials, departments, and regions, but I chose to share this quote with you because it relates to some of the challenges previously mentioned by the citizen.
The post office and post bank collapsed pretty much recently, and so now they've started using the supermarkets as an alternative place for people to collect payments, and that does help. But yeah, I mean, they've actually reduced their footprint and they've got less service points than they used to have, and it's people having to travel further to fewer places. So I don't know if maybe that's going to pressure people to go online eventually because it's just becoming untenable for them. But yeah, that's not good. But I also think that they're going to have to change people's minds about the online options. There's a greater level of accessibility than one might think for people's, ability to use it because of the prevalence of cell phones, and people have become quite comfortable using WhatsApp. WhatsApp is almost universally used, among the youth especially, and that has opened the gate, I think, to people starting to be more comfortable with cell phone-based IT applications, but it's still a long way to go, I think, before they get it right.
Later, he adds,
"Unfortunately, in a lot of rural areas where the most vulnerable people are, it's a very long distance for those people to get to any service point of SASA, which is the Social Security Agency, to actually do what they need to do, and it costs the money to go there. So if people can start to get their money online, then theoretically it will be for their benefit, will save the money and so on. But the problem is that, with the vulnerable especially, there are those who don't have higher levels of education, who don't have access to connectivity, or who are older and don't gel very well with technology. It means that that's something they can't easily access. But they do need to reduce the situation where there's all these queues because the queues get so long, people even die in the queue, and if they can get more people onto the electronic systems, that will mitigate that. The problem, I think, also is a lot of people don't trust the electronic systems. So that's not only a question of skill or ability to use them, it's a question of people think that their money will be stolen if they use the electronic system, so they want cash in hand. And yeah, that's an unfortunate stigma that's attached to the electronic options. And that's one of the things that keeps feeding the queues. I think of a lot of the people who are queuing, if they had faith in the system and they wouldn't be there, and they would make the queues less severe for those who really need to come to the office because they don't have tech skills or they don't have connectivity, etc. So yeah, I think they've got a long way to go with this thing.
In this account, the official mentions a number of problems, but he also sees digitalization as part of the possible solution. Similar to the lady from the first quote, he identifies transportation and the lack of financial resources as key issues. Despite all these barriers, he says that people often prefer to go to a physical office and queue in person. One of the problems he mentions is the lack of trust that people tend to have in electronic payments. The potential reasons for all these observed phenomena is something that I will look at in more detail in my research. In sum, he believes that there is still a long way to go for digitalization to fully happen in the sense that everyone can participate. This perspective is also mirrored by the following quotes, in which we will hear from two employees of the public protector who work in the Eastern Cape branch. As mentioned earlier, it is considered to be the poorest province of South Africa in terms of GDP per capita. The interviews stress that digitalization is going ahead slowly in that region. One of the staff highlights that
"We've got a register in place there. Some of them, they can't even fill that register form, you understand? Digitalization, it's there. But it's slowly here in Eastern Cape. It's to those people like you who've got access to emails, you understand? And most of the people there, they don't have such an access, but they stay in rural areas. Some of the people even now here in Bisho, you ask her or him, what is WhatsApp? Doesn't know nothing about WhatsApp. Remember, things are slowly this side. You can't compare this side with Gauteng province in terms of speedy infrastructure."
This account by a public protector staff underscores the differences or inequalities that exist within the country, not only between cities and rural areas, but also between provinces. Gauteng, the other province he mentions, is the smallest province by land area and at the same time the most populous province, with more than a quarter of the national population, as it also contains the country's largest city, Johannesburg. As he implies, internet access is a very different story in Gauteng as opposed to Eastern Cape. In the longer interview, he also mentions the problem of lack of literacy, not only digital literacy, among parts of the rural population. Another public protector staff finds that looking at the current state of affairs, the digitalization development should not be too fast, so that people will not be left behind.
Digitalization, I think it should be something that is, we cannot be fully digital because of our clientele. And our clientele that is those people that can't access those services. So we can do a digital for, say, I don't know who. I think this digital thing we can do 30-70, go digital 70%, but 30%. We know that all those people that are unable to, even if they want to, they just don't have resources. We can't go fully digital because not everyone is able to use those services. Not everyone has got access to the network. People in the remote areas don't even have the network. So we could operate digitally, but we cannot do away with the manual way of doing things with the old way. We need to leave the 30% so we can cater to those people. Maybe in the next century, we may be able to, because the generation is changing, but not in the near 10 years. We can't go fully digital.
So overall, the accounts you just heard from different perspectives identify very similar problems with regard to accessing public services in the digital age in South Africa, in particular in the rural areas. On one hand, there are deficits on the infrastructural side. Although, as I mentioned in the beginning, there are a number of policies and programs in place, many people still experience a lack of connectivity. So in certain places, internet, and to be more precise, stable and reliable internet, is not always available. And if it is available, data tends to be very expensive, as many interviewees mentioned. On the other hand, certain segments of society have low literacy and digital literacy skills, and this comes along with the lack of trust in digital tools and services. With regard to administrative justice, we need to consider that in a country that is already the most unequal country in the world, the digital divide tends to increase the existing inequality. Also, scholars have argued that access to the internet needs to be recognized as a fundamental human right, as it is essential for societal and democratic participation in the 21st century. Overall, I think it is important to remember that the digital transformation in South Africa, as well as in any other country, needs to be inclusive to ensure that no one is left behind, especially when access to public services and thus to administrative justice is concerned. Thanks for listening and stay tuned.
Research and Innovations, Department, Administration, Economics, Security, Politics at FH Campus Wien.